Hey guys, tonight you find yourself beneath a low grey sky, at the edge of a walled town where rain slides down the old stones as if the clouds have decided to wash the whole kingdom by hand. You stand with mud on your boots, damp wool at your shoulders, cold fingers tucked beneath your cloak, and the breath of nearby horses smoking softly in the evening air. The road behind you has become more puddle than path, and the road ahead passes beneath a gatehouse built from blocks that, people say, once belonged to the Romans, though no one can quite agree whether the Romans would be flattered or ask for their masonry back. The town smells of wet straw, river mist, hearth smoke, horse sweat, and that special medieval perfume known as everything is damp and no one invented waterproof shoes yet. A bell sounds somewhere beyond the gate, slow and bronze, marking the hour from a church tower whose roof leans slightly, as if tired from centuries of listening to confessions. Torchlight shivers in the rain. A cartwheel grinds in the mud. A dog watches you from beneath an overturned basket with the solemn expression of a village elder judging your life choices. Medieval travel brochures really oversold this experience. Still, there is shelter ahead, and that is enough to make any road seem kindly. You draw nearer to the gate, where two guards huddle beneath a wooden awning dark with rain. One wears a fur-lined cloak patched at the elbow. The other chews on a strip of dried apple as if it contains the answers to all weather-related suffering. They look you over with the weary patience of men who have seen every kind of traveller arrive soaked, hungry, and pretending not to be miserable. And truly, you probably would not last a week out here not with the cold stones, the uncertain meals, the leaky roofs, the suspicious water, and the habit everyone has of recommending leeches for problems that are clearly not improved by more leeches. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as the rain taps softly on your hood, feel free to comment where you're listening from and what time it is in your corner of the world, whether you're tucked in at midnight, resting before dawn, or simply hiding from your own modern weather in a much warmer room than this one. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step beneath the gate arch, and the sound of rain changes at once. Outside, it had been open and silvery, falling on road, field, and ditch. Under the arch, it becomes hollow, dripping from stone seams, tapping into small black puddles gathered in worn grooves where thousands of boots have passed before yours. The guards ask your business, and you answer with the plain humility of a traveller seeking shelter. One of them lifts an iron key from his belt, though the gate is already open. Perhaps simply because a man with an iron key likes to remind the world that he owns one. Beyond the arch, the town gathers close around you. Timber houses lean over the lane, their upper stories nearly touching, so the rain falls in narrow ribbons between them. Rushes lie scattered across thresholds to keep the worst mud from being carried indoors, though the mud seems deeply unimpressed by this strategy. Beeswax candles glow behind horn-paned windows. Smoke curls from roof holes and crooked chimneys, flattening beneath the rain before drifting into the lane. Somewhere a woman calls for a boy named Martin, and somewhere else Martin wisely does not answer. The stones underfoot are old, older than the church, older than the Guildhall, older even than the manor lord's grandfather's grandfather, which is how people measure nearly everything here. Some swear this street follows the line of a Roman road, though those who tell the tale never fully agree whether the Romans built it straight because they were disciplined, proud, or simply very bad at enjoying curves. On a rainy day like this, you can almost imagine them here, cloaks dark with water. Sandals splashed with mud, ducking under tiled roofs, complaining in Latin about the weather with exactly the same spirit as every soul in the town now. A monk passes you with his hood pulled low, carrying a wrapped bundle against his chest. For a moment he glances your way, sharp-eyed, then slips beneath an arcade of old stone columns built into the wall of a baker's shop. The columns do not match one another. One is smooth and pale, another red-veined, another chipped at the base where generations of carts have scraped it. The baker has hung onions from a Roman capital, which seems disrespectful but practical. And practicality wins most arguments in wet weather. You follow the slope of the lane toward the centre of town, guided by the bell that keeps tolling through the mist. The sound rolls over the roofs, softening as it goes, settling into your bones like warmth remembered rather than warmth present. A narrow drain runs beside the path, carrying rainwater, straw, and mysterious bits of medieval life downhill. You avoid studying it too closely. Some knowledge does not improve sleep. At the market cross, the town opens into a square paved with uneven stone and shining mud. The stalls are closing early, their canvas covers sagging under rain. A fishmonger packs smoked eels into a wooden crate. A woman selling coarse bread wraps her loaves in linen and mutters that St. Swithin must be in a mood. A tinker gathers tin cups, buckles, bent spoons, and little iron hooks into his pack, each object clicking softly like tiny teeth, near the cross. A pilgrim with a patched cloak warms his hands around a cup of watered ale and watches the clouds as if personally offended by them. You pause beneath the shelter of a projecting roof. Water drips just beyond your nose, across the square. You see the ruin that drew you here in the first place, a stretch of Roman wall, low and stubborn, built of flat red tiles and pale stone, now serving as the back of a stable, the side of a shed, and, according to the town children, the sleeping place of a ghost who dislikes turnips. No one can quite agree whether the ghost is Roman, Saxon, or merely someone's uncle who fell asleep there once and was exaggerated into legend over the years. The rain deepens. It darkens the wall until the red tiles gleam like banked embers. A cart horse stamps nearby, sending up a soft splash. Its driver curses gently, not with anger, but with the tired artistry of a man who has cursed rain since childhood, and now does it mostly from habit. You pull your cloak tighter and feel the day closing around you, the gate behind, the unknown lodging ahead, the wet stones beneath, the bell above. And this strange old town where Roman memory sleeps under medieval smoke. A woman from the bread stall notices you lingering and points with her chin toward a long, low building near the churchyard. "Guest hall," she says, "if the roof holds." Then, after a pause, she adds, "Mostly holds. That is good enough. In this world, mostly is often a blessing." You cross the square slowly, boots sucking at the mud, passing the market cross where rain runs down the carved face of a saint until he appears to be quietly regretting sainthood. The dog from the gate has followed you, or perhaps there are many dogs in this town with the same judgmental face. It trots at a respectful distance, pausing whenever you pause, as though appointed by some damp local authority to make sure you do not steal a turnip or insult the ghost. As you near the guest hall, warmth begins to reach you, not much, only a breath of smoke and cooking, but enough to soften the ache in your fingers. Through the half-open door, you glimpse rushes on the floor, a clay lamp, a row of wet cloaks steaming from pegs, and travellers sitting close together in the tired peace of people who have survived the road and now ask very little from the universe beyond dry socks, which they will not get. Behind you, the bell sounds once more, The note widens through the rainy town, touching the Roman stones, the market stalls, the dripping roofs, the gatehouse arch, and the road beyond the walls where evening gathers in the ruts. You step inside, and the door closes against the weather with a low wooden sigh. Inside the guest hall, the air folds around you like a damp wool blanket that has been held near a fire just long enough to become comforting, but not long enough to become honest. Smoke gathers beneath the rafters in a blue-grey veil, turning the beams soft and shadowy, and the rushes underfoot give off a sweet, grassy smell mixed with mud, spilled ale, and the faint sourness of too many boots learning to live together. You stand near the doorway for a moment while rain ticks against the shutters and slides from the edges of the thatch outside in steady threads. The dog, having apparently promoted itself from road companion to household inspector, slips in behind you before the door closes. It shakes once, thoroughly, generously, and without consulting anyone. A nearby traveller receives most of the blessing and looks down at his damp sleeve with the patience of a man who has been disappointed by both weather and animals before. A woman with rolled sleeves and a linen coif points you toward the far side of the hall, where an old stone arcade has been built into the wall. It is the kind of place that seems older than the rest of the building, with squat columns, worn bases, and half-buried carvings that might once have been vines, serpents, or Roman decorations meant to suggest civilization and excellent drainage. Now the arcade shelters benches, baskets, and a row of travellers trying not to drip onto one another. No one can quite agree whether the arcade was once part of a Roman portico, a merchant's porch, or simply a rich man's mistake in stone. But everyone agrees it keeps off the rain, which is the more important scholarship. You settle beneath it, grateful for the dry ledge above your head. Your cloak clings coldly to your shoulders, and you loosen the clasp at your throat. A boy brings you a wooden cup of thin ale, safer than water and nearly as cheerful as an apology. You sip it slowly. It tastes of grain, smoke, and the quiet medieval confidence that boiling and brewing can improve most things, which, to be fair, is often true. Around you, the hall murmurs. A peddler unwraps his goods on a cloth-bone buttons, little combs, needles in a leather case, a few cheap pilgrim badges cast in dull pewter. A carter warms his hands over a brazier and tells anyone willing to listen that the Western Road has become a river with opinions. Two women from the market compare prices of onions and wool, speaking in low voices as if both goods might overhear and become more expensive, near the arcade's end. The sharp-eyed monk you glimpsed outside sits with his bundle in his lap, his hood still up, his gaze lowered but not asleep. Rain leaks through some floor in the roof and falls into a clay bowl placed carefully below it. Plink, plink, plink. The sound begins as an annoyance, then becomes a kind of clock. A child nearby counts the drops until she loses interest at 43 and declares that the bowl is haunted. Some swear that if rainwater collected from a church roof is rubbed onto a wart beneath a waning moon, the wart will vanish. Others say the wart merely becomes offended and moves elsewhere. The woman with the linen coif says both versions are nonsense, but she keeps the bowl anyway. You stretch your boots toward the brazier, careful not to seem greedy for warmth. In a hall like this, warmth belongs to everyone and no one. It is shared by degree, by patience, by how close one dares to lean before another. Traveller coughs meaningfully. The dog settles under your bench with a sigh so dramatic it might be auditioning for sainthood. Its fur smells of wet lane and old straw. Beyond the arcade, the door opens and closes as people arrive from the square. Each entrance brings a bright sound of rain, a gust of cold air, and a brief glimpse of the world outside torchlight trembling in puddles, the market cross shining black, the old Roman wall crouched beneath the wet dusk. A man enters carrying a sack of coarse bread against his chest. A girl brings in an armful of kindling tucked under her cloak. A pilgrim with a shell sewn to his hat ducks through last, holding one shoe in his hand and wearing the expression of someone who has recently lost an argument with mud. He sits near you under the arcade and begins scraping his sole with a small knife. Road to the Abbey is worse. He says to no one in particular, deep enough to swallow a bishop. The peddler looks up. Would it give him back? A few people smile into their cups. The monk does not. Perhaps he's thinking holy thoughts. Perhaps he's simply cold. Even now, it is hard to tell whether silence in a monk is devotion, suspicion, or the natural result of damp stockings. The woman with the coif moves through the hall with a basket of bread, handing each traveller a piece and accepting small coins, promises, or news in return. You receive a heel of dark loaf, coarse enough to remind your teeth they are employed. She tells you that the rain began before prime and has not stopped since. The mill stream is swollen, the lower pasture is half under water, and old Peter the Thatcher claims he saw frogs gathered on a Roman paving stone as if holding court. Frogs know things, says the pilgrim solemnly. Frogs know mud, says the carter. This seems difficult to dispute. You eat slowly, letting the bread soften with sips of ale. The hall grows dimmer as evening thickens. More candles are lit, and the beeswax gives off a faint honeyed smell that rises gently through the smoke. On the wall opposite you hangs a small painted saint, darkened by soot. One hand raised in blessing over a room that could use practical repairs as much as grace. Beneath the saint, someone has tucked a sprig of rosemary into a crack between stones. The herb is said to sharpen memory, guard against ill air, and remind travellers of better kitchens. Those who tell the tale never fully agree which virtue matters most. Outside, the rain falls harder. It drums on the roof, runs down the shutters, and pours from the eaves in shining ropes. The old arcade shelters you well enough, though a fine mist seems to breathe through the stone itself. You run your fingers over the column beside you and feel shallow grooves beneath the grime. They might be chisel marks, they might be letters worn past reading, they might be nothing at all, yet in the candlelight, with water sounding everywhere. It is easy to imagine another rainy day long ago, when Roman townsfolk stood beneath a portico much like this one, shaking rain from cloaks, complaining about prices, waiting for the clouds to pass. Perhaps they bought bread here. Perhaps they listened to wheels in the street and watched water run from tiled roofs. Perhaps some tired clerk leaned exactly where you lean now and thought the weather had gone on too long. The centuries between you feel wide, but the rain stitches them together with small, patient threads. The monk finally lifts his head. His eyes meet yours for the briefest moment, then drop to your muddy boots, then to the dog beneath the bench. That animal followed you, he says. It may have followed the bread. The pilgrim offers. The dog opens one eye, neither confirming nor denying. The monk tightens his arms around the wrapped bundle. Dogs see what men miss. This is exactly the kind of statement people make in halls where candles flicker and old stones refuse to explain themselves. No one answers at first. The carter crosses himself lazily, perhaps from belief, perhaps from habit, perhaps because he has eaten too much onion and wants divine support. Then the woman with the coif snorts and says, "Dogs see sausages." The spell breaks gently. Someone laughs. The monk looks mildly wounded by common sense, which is one of the risks of speaking mysteriously near supper. You finish your bread and let the warmth of the hall seep into you grain by grain. Rain keeps falling beyond the shutters. The bowl beneath the leak continues its steady plink. The dog's breathing deepens under your bench and under the old stone arcade, among travellers, wet cloaks, cheap charms, Roman remnants, and rumours softened by ale. You feel the long evening begin to settle, not quickly, not dramatically, but like ash drifting down through smoke. The rain does not pass. It settles over the town as if it has taken lodging for the night and paid in advance. Beyond the shutters, water keeps rushing from the eaves, gurgling along the gutters, and tapping at every wooden surface with small, determined fingers. Inside the hall, people shift closer to the brazier, and the smoke gathers so thickly under the rafters that the beams seem to float in a dim blue sea. The bowl beneath the leak is nearly full now. Each drop lands with a heavier note, as though the roof is slowly learning music. You sit beneath the old arcade until the stiffness leaves your hands. Your cloak hangs from a peg, steaming faintly, its hem dark with mud. The dog remains under your bench, nose on paws, guarding nothing in particular with great seriousness. Across the hall, the suspicious monk still clutches his wrapped bundle. No one can quite agree whether a monk who travels in rain with a hidden parcel is carrying relics, books, cheese, or trouble. And in this town any of those might be equally valuable. At last, the woman with the linen coif returns and nods toward a side door half hidden behind sacks of onions. "Storehouse has drier air," she says. "If you do not mind old stones, in a medieval town, this is like asking whether you mind breathing." You rise and follow her through the side door, ducking beneath a beam so low it has probably humbled more travellers than sermons ever could. The passage beyond smells of cold mortar, dried herbs, damp grain, and the faint mineral breath of ancient masonry. A tallow lamp hangs from an iron hook, throwing a small uncertain glow over the walls. The stones here are different from those in the hall, larger, flatter, and set with a precision that feels almost stern. Red Roman tiles run in neat courses between pale blocks. Here and there, old plaster clings to the surface in patches, smooth as eggshell. The woman lifts the lamp. "Bathhouse once," she says, "so they say." You step into a broad, low chamber, and your boots sound softly on the floor. The place is no bathhouse now. It is packed with sacks of barley, baskets of apples wrinkling into winter sweetness, bundles of dried nettle, rosemary, sage, and wormwood hanging from cords. Clay jars line the wall. A pile of firewood rests where some Roman citizen may once have stretched warm and smug after a hard day of being conquered by no one. The old pools have been filled in or covered with planks, though one shallow stone basin remains near the far wall, dry except for a little rainwater that has seeped in through a crack. Some swear that Roman baths were places of marble, perfumes, gossip, and steam, where people argued politics while being scraped clean with curved metal tools. Others in town insist the Romans boiled themselves for health, vanity, or punishment. Those who tell the tale never fully agree, because no one here has seen Rome, and the old bathhouse has spent the last 100 years holding turnips. Still, the chamber remembers warmth. You feel it in the shape of the place, in the low brick arches near the floor, in the hollow channels beneath broken paving stones. The woman points with her lamp to a row of little openings. "Hippocaust," she says, pronouncing the word carefully, as if it might bite. "Underfloor fire tunnels. My grandfather said hot air ran beneath the room. The pilgrim from the hall has followed you in, shoe now repaired with a strip of leather. He peers at the openings, like a dragon in the cellar, Like smoke with somewhere better to go, says the woman. That seems a more useful description. You crouch near one of the openings and feel only cold air, damp and dusty. A spider has made a kingdom there, and by local standards, it is probably better governed than most. The bricks are narrow and flat, unlike the rougher stones of the medieval walls above. Some bear faint marks, a line, a thumbprint, perhaps the sign of a mason long turned to dust. You touch one gently. It is strange how the past survives not as a grand speech, but as a fingerprint baked into clay. The storehouse keeper, a small old man with a hooded cloak and a nose red from cold, emerges from behind the sacks. He carries a tally stick and a sprig of rue tucked behind one ear. Rue, people say, wards off evil air, fleas, and unwanted questions, though it appears only partly successful in the last duty. He looks at you, at the pilgrim, at the woman, then sighs as if visitors are another kind of damp. Do not step on the covered pit, he says. Naturally, you look down. A set of planks lies across a square depression in the floor, weighted with stones. Beneath the gaps, darkness waits. The old man explains that rainwater sometimes gathers below, and once a goose fell through and emerged so offended that it refused to lay for a week. Some swear the pit has no bottom. Others say it leads to Roman tunnels under the town, where gold statues, sleeping emperors, or barrels of very old wine wait in the dark, even now. It is hard to tell whether people believe such stories or simply enjoy having something to say during long rain. The woman with the coif takes a jar from the shelf and opens it. The smell rises sharp and green. For coughs, she says, hyssop, honey, and a little vinegar. The pilgrim leans away. That sounds like a cure that makes illness reconsider its choices. You almost smile. Medieval remedies often seem less like healing and more like negotiations with discomfort. Still, the herbs are carefully gathered, dried, labelled with bits of cord and memory. In winter, these jars matter. A household's survival may depend on knowing which leaf eases a fever, which root draws out swelling, which charm calms a frightened child, and which saint is best approached when all practical ideas have failed. Near the far wall, above the old basin, someone has placed a small wooden cross. Beside it sits a Roman tile with a paw print hardened into its surface, the mark of some animal that stepped across wet clay many centuries ago. The dog from the hall pads in at that moment and sniffs the tile gravely, as if recognizing an ancestor. The old man crosses himself. Dogs know old places, he mutters. Dogs know storehouses, says the woman. The dog sneezes into a sack of barley, offering no clarification. You move slowly through the chamber, letting your eyes adjust. The lamp glow slides over old plaster, grain sacks, hanging herbs, the red stripes of Roman brick. Rain sounds distant here, softened by thick walls. It is not gone, only removed, as if the whole wet town has become a dream happening somewhere overhead. The air is cool, but sheltered. Your breath clouds faintly. Somewhere a mouse scratches inside the wall, performing its own tiny business with admirable secrecy. The keeper shows you a broken piece of painted plaster found when the floor was repaired, a curling vine, a blue line, and the edge of what might have been a bird. He keeps it wrapped in linen, not because it is useful, but because it is beautiful in a way no one fully understands. Roman, he says, or old enough. In this town, that is nearly the same thing. You imagine the bathhouse as it may have been on another rainy day, steam rising, sandaled feet on warm tiles, rain pattering on a tiled roof instead of thatch, voices echoing in Latin, laughing, bargaining, complaining that the oil is too costly or the water too cool. Perhaps a child pressed a hand against the painted wall. Perhaps a merchant hurried in from the rain and stood exactly where you stand, relieved to be warm. Centuries later, barley sleeps in the same room. Herbs dry from the rafters, and travellers shelter from weather that has never cared who rules the roads. The woman closes the jar and sets it back. The old man checks his tally stick. The pilgrim touches the poor mark tile for luck, then pretends he has not. You do not blame him. In a wet, uncertain world, luck is just another cloak, thin perhaps, but worth wearing. At last. The lamp flickers, and the woman says supper will soon be served in the hall. You turn back toward the passage, carrying with you the smell of herbs and cold stone, the image of the Roman paw print, and the odd comfort of knowing that even grand places become ordinary with time. Baths become storehouses, empires become walls, rainy days become stories told beside smoky fires, and you, with damp boots and warming hands, pass once more beneath the low beam toward the murmuring hall. You return from the old bathhouse storehouse with the scent of rosemary and cold Roman brick still clinging to your thoughts. The hall seems warmer now, not because the fire has grown much larger, but because your eyes have learned its dimness, and your body has decided to be grateful for anything that is not open rain. The dog trots in ahead of you, shakes one paw with delicate disgust, and resumes its place beneath your bench as if it has merely inspected the foundations and found them barely acceptable. Supper is not ready yet. In a medieval hall, soon is a word with soft edges. It may mean a few breaths, a quarter hour, or however long it takes for a cook to win an argument with wet firewood. So you drift toward the far end of the room, where a narrow door stands open beside a shuttered window. A line of candlelight spills from within, pale and golden, trembling each time the wind presses rain against the wall. Inside, a small chamber waits, half office, half cupboard, half nest for papers, which makes 3 halves but somehow feels correct. Shelves sag beneath rolls of parchment, broken seals, wooden tablets, and bundles of tally sticks tied with faded cord. A desk sits near the dripping window, and at it bends a thin clerk with ink on his fingers, ink on his cuff, and one small dot of ink on his nose that no one has had the mercy to mention. He writes by the light of 2 beeswax candles, each flame standing upright in the stillness before bowing whenever a draught slips through the shutters. The clerk does not look up at once. His quill scratches steadily across the page, a dry little sound beneath the wet tapping of rain. Scratch, pause, dip, scratch, pause, dip. The rhythm is soothing in its fussy way, like a mouse keeping accounts. You stand quietly, and after a moment he says, "If you have come about the mill toll, it was due before Michaelmas." You tell him you have not come about the mill toll. "Good," he says, still writing. "Then I may continue liking you." On the desk lies a sheet copied in a neat, narrow hand. At the top, a line of Latin curls across the page, and below it, in the local tongue, the clerk has begun translating a tale about old Rome citizens staying indoors on a day of rain, visiting baths, reading letters, playing board games, eating hot food, and making complaints about the weather with impressive civic discipline. No one can quite agree whether the text is truly ancient or merely copied from another copy of another copy made by a monk who enjoyed imagining Romans as slightly better dressed villagers. The clerk seems aware of this and continues anyway. "Rain makes people curious about rain," he says, dipping the quill again. "They ask what the Romans did when the sky fell on them, as if men of old had secret weather." You move closer to the desk. The window beside him leaks at the lower corner, and a small rag has been tucked there to catch the water. It has failed with quiet dignity. A clay cup sits below the sill, receiving drops one by one, answering the bowl in the hall with a smaller, sharper note. On the wall hangs a wax tablet covered in names and numbers. Beside it, a string of dried lavender has been tied above the window, because some swear it keeps moths, fever, and melancholy away. Though even now it's hard to tell whether it is medicine, charm, or simply a pleasant smell in a room full of damp parchment. The clerk finally looks up. His face is pale from indoor work, his eyes red-rimmed from candlelight, but his expression is kind in the tired manner of someone who has spent all day turning other people's confusion into official marks. He gestures to a stool, and you sit carefully, aware that everything in the room looks as if it might either break or accuse you of breaking it. He shows you a small scrap of Roman writing found in the old bathhouse wall, not much, only a few letters scratched onto a tile before firing. Could be a maker's mark, he says. Could be a name. Could be a joke no one has understood in 800 years. That is a strangely humbling thought. Somewhere, long ago, a tile maker may have made a joke for his fellow workers, and now a medieval clerk squints at it by candlelight while rain taps the shutters. History often arrives not as a trumpet blast, but as an unreadable scratch. The clerk resumes copying. He tells you that some Roman gentlemen kept wax tablets for quick notes and wrote letters even on rainy days, sending them by messenger along roads that were straighter than most moral arguments. He has heard they played a game with little counters on a board, something like the tables game men play now in alehouses, though those who tell the tale never fully agree on the rules. This may be because rules change, or because people losing at games have always claimed the rules were misunderstood. A gust presses against the shutters, and the candles lean. One flame gutters low. The clerk cups a hand around it with practised tenderness. Beeswax is costly, and no sensible person lets a candle die just for drama. The room fills with its honeyed scent, layered over ink, damp wool, old parchment, and the faint metallic tang of the knife he uses to sharpen quills. He trims the quill with tiny precise cuts. Goose feather, he says, though swan is better if one has money or a generous pond. The nib must be shaped just so, split at the tip, wiped often, and never lent to a careless man. A careless man can ruin a quill faster than a pig can find a kitchen garden. He says this with such calm bitterness that you suspect a specific careless man is living rent-free in his memory. Outside, the bell sounds again through rain. The note reaches the chamber softened by walls, yet still deep enough to stir the candle flames. The clerk pauses, crosses a small mark in the margin, and murmurs the hour. Monastery bells, church bells, manor bells. Here time does not live in clocks so much as in sound, habit, hunger, prayer, and the changing duties of hands, prime, terce, sext, nun, vespers, compline. The day is folded by bells the way linen is folded into chests. You ask, gently, whether the Romans marked rainy hours the same way. He smiles. They had water clocks, so I am told, which seems bold in weather like this. The joke is dry enough to survive the room. He turns one parchment toward you. It shows a rough drawing of the old town, the gate, the square, the church, the ruined bathhouse, the line of the Roman wall. Not beautiful, but careful. Small notes mark places where tiles have been found, coins turned up by ploughs, and a stone with letters now serving as the step of a baker's back door. The clerk says the baker refuses to give it up because it sits level, and level stones are rarer than historical respect. Rain runs down the outer wall in steady sheets. For a while, neither of you speaks. You listen to the quill and the weather, to the muffled voices in the hall, to the dog sighing just beyond the doorway. The clerk writes a sentence about Roman households staying indoors during rain, warming themselves near braziers, mending clothes, reading aloud, and waiting for the streets to drain. You imagine them again, not as marble statues, but as people with wet hems, cold fingers, smoky rooms, and small irritations. The clerk sands the fresh ink, then tips the page so the grains slide into a wooden tray. "There," he says softly. "Another little bridge." You understand what he means. Between Roman rain and medieval rain, between a ruined bathhouse and a smoky hall, between someone writing long ago and someone listening now, outside, water continues to fall on roofs, roads, walls, and graves with perfect indifference. But inside this narrow chamber, by candle and quill, the day is being held still. At last, the woman with the linen coif calls from the hall that the pottage is ready. The clerk sets down his quill with visible reluctance, as if leaving the Romans alone in the rain feels impolite. You rise from the stool, your knees stiff, your mind quieted by ink and candlelight. As you step back toward the hall, the candle behind you flickers over the page, over the half-translated Roman tale, over the clerk's stained fingers, and over the little cup beneath the leaking window. Still counting drops in the dark, you step back into the hall just as supper begins to move through the room in bowls, trenchers, and little clouds of steam. The warmth is thicker now, made not only of fire but of bodies, breath, wet cloaks, and the deep ordinary hope that rises whenever food appears after a long day of rain. The rushes on the floor have been stirred by many feet, releasing their grassy smell again, though beneath it lingers the honest scent of mud, smoke, dog, and mankind attempting civilization with limited ventilation. You return to your bench beneath the old arcade. The dog lifts its head as if you've been away for years, then places its chin back on its paws, satisfied that you have survived the dangerous world of clerks and documents. The suspicious monk sits nearby, his wrapped bundle now tucked under his cloak. Across from him, the pilgrim rubs his repaired shoe with a scrap of wool, perhaps comforting it after its earlier disgrace in the mud. A wooden trencher is set before you, dark bread hollowed slightly by use, and waiting to receive whatever the pot has agreed to become. The woman with the linen coif ladles pottage into it, barley, onions, cabbage, a little leek, perhaps a ghost of bacon if the imagination is kind. Steam rises into your face, carrying the smell of earth and hearth. It is not a feast for a king, but kings, you suspect, are overrated at supper. A hungry traveller with warm pottage may understand happiness better than a lord with 12 dishes and a chair designed mainly to display authority. Beside the pottage comes a piece of smoked fish, salty and dark, a wedge of coarse bread, and a cup of ale with enough body to remind you that water is not always trustworthy. You eat slowly, blowing on each spoonful. The barley is soft, the onions sweet from long cooking, the greens limp but welcome. Every bite seems to travel down through your chest and settle somewhere near your chilled ribs, repairing you from the inside with quiet medieval efficiency. No one can quite agree whether Roman rainy day meals were finer than this. The clerk, now seated with ink still shadowing his fingers, says they had sauces with fish brine, olives, spiced wine, and little cakes sweetened with honey. The carter says that sounds like food invented by men with too much empire and not enough honest hunger. The pilgrim suggests that any people clever enough to heat floors probably knew how to heat soup. The monk says nothing, though his eyes rest briefly on the smoked fish with a seriousness that could be spiritual or merely hungry. The woman with the coif places a second ladleful onto the monk's trencher. "Eat," she says. Mystery keeps poorly on an empty belly. A few quiet smiles pass around the table. Even the monk accepts the bowl without protest. Steam curls against his hood, softening the severe line of his face. He murmurs a blessing, and the words move through the hall like a small warm thread. Some cross themselves. Others begin eating before Grace has fully settled, trusting that heaven understands cold pottage must be handled promptly. The meal slows the room. Voices lower, shoulders ease. Outside, rain continues its steady work on the town, but inside, spoons scrape wood and cups are lifted with both hands. A little boy near the hearth falls asleep sitting upright, his head drifting forward until his mother catches it with one practiced palm. Near the door, a merchant counts coins beneath the table, not because anyone is likely to steal them in that exact moment, but because counting coins seems to comfort merchants the way prayer comforts monks. You notice small details as you eat the iron hook above the hearth blackened by years of pots. The soot-dark rafters where smoke has written its slow history, the patched sleeve of the carter, the pilgrim badge on the traveller's hat, shaped like a shell and bent at one edge, the half-burned candle near the arcade, its wax running down in a pale little river. Someone has scattered fresh rushes near the doorway to cover the worst of the mud, and someone else has tucked a charm of knotted thread above the lintel. Some swear such knots can trap wandering ill luck before it enters a house. Others say ill luck is quite capable of ducking. The clerk eats with careful fingers, keeping his ink-stained hand away from the bread as if afraid of copying supper by accident. He tells you that in certain old Roman houses, rainwater was gathered in a central pool open to the sky. This impresses the pilgrim until the carter points out that his own roof also gathers rainwater in the middle of the room, and no one calls that architecture. "Perhaps you need Latin," says the clerk. "Perhaps I need a thatcher," says the carter. The hall receives this as wisdom. More ale is poured. The warmth grows drowsier. The dog emerges from beneath the bench and sits with unnatural politeness beside your knee. It does not beg. It simply believes in your moral improvement. After a while, you surrender a crumb of bread. The dog accepts it with the grave restraint of a minor noble receiving tribute. The monk watches. You feed it, and it will follow. "It followed before I fed it," you say. Then it chose you. The woman with the coif passes behind him and says, "It chooses anyone with bread." Still, the monk's words settle somewhere in the room. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether animals are merely practical or whether they sense roads, spirits, and hidden griefs better than people do. In villages, dogs are sometimes allowed to sleep near cradles because their growls warn against thieves, foxes, and things less easily named. Black dogs, white dogs, brindled dogs, each has a story attached if the night is long enough. The one beside you licks its nose and looks profoundly uninterested in folklore. After the pottage, a wooden bowl of stewed apples is passed around, soft and brown, with a little honey stirred through for sweetness. The taste surprises you simple, warm, almost bright after smoke and salt. Someone says apples cooked with honey help settle the stomach. Someone else says they draw out melancholy. The carter says they draw out second helpings. This is accepted as the most provable claim. You lean back against the old stone column, full enough to feel human again. Rain taps beyond the shutters. The brazier glows low. The clerk wipes his mouth. then checks the edge of his sleeve for ink and finds more than he hoped. The monk finally unwraps part of his bundle, just enough to reveal a corner of carved wood, dark and polished with age, a box, perhaps, a reliquary, perhaps, or simply a container for something ordinary made mysterious by secrecy. No one asks. Not yet. In a hall after supper, curiosity moves slowly, warmed by ale and delayed by manners. Besides, the sound of the rain has become heavy and soothing, filling each pause before talk can sharpen. You think again of the Romans in their rainy rooms, sandals drying near braziers, cloaks hung from pegs, board games half played, letters read aloud, servants moving bowls through warm air. So much changes, and so much does not. People still gather where there is fire. They still complain about roads. They still believe soup improves the world. They still tell stories when rain makes the evening smaller. The woman begins clearing trenches. The boy by the hearth is carried to a straw pallet. The pilgrim stretches his legs and sighs. The dog returns to its post under your bench, warmed by crumbs and destiny. Above you, smoke thickens beneath the rafters, and the old arcade holds its silence, sheltering the room as it did long before anyone now living had a name. You sit very still, listening to spoons, rain, breath, and the fading bell from somewhere beyond the walls. Supper settles in you like a soft weight. The road feels far away, the town feels close, and the long rainy night, instead of seeming harsh, begins to feel almost kind. After supper, the hall loosens into the slow, murmuring disorder of people who have eaten enough to forgive the weather, at least for a little while. Bowls are gathered, trenchers scraped, cups refilled, and the rushes are stirred again by tired feet seeking warmer corners. The rain outside does not soften. It beats on the shutters, pours from the eaves, and runs through the market square in little brown streams, as though the whole town has become one enormous dripping roof. Yet the market is not finished. Not quite. In a place like this, trade does not end simply because the sky behaves badly. Hunger continues as pride continues. Coins remain nervous in purses. So you rise with the pilgrim and the clerk, draw your cloak over your shoulders, and step back through the hall door into the wet evening, where the air meets your face cold and immediate. The square gleams under torchlight. Every stone holds a reflection. The market cross stands in the middle, slick with rain, the carved saint looking even more sorrowful than before, though perhaps any saint left outdoors in this weather would seem deeply committed to suffering. Stalls lean beneath sagging canvas, ropes creak, wooden poles drip. Straw has been thrown over the worst patches of mud, but the mud has accepted this offering and become stronger. You move carefully between the stalls, boots sinking and lifting with soft, rude sounds. The dog follows close behind, stepping around puddles when possible and through them when dignity allows. A wool merchant stands under a patched awning, guarding his folded cloth as if defending a castle. He has raised the bales on boards, covered them with waxed linen, and placed his youngest son beside them with a stick, presumably to fight off rain, thieves, and poor bargaining. "Fine wool," he calls to a passing woman, dry as a bishop's sermon. The woman touches the corner of the one roll, squeezes water from it, and looks at him. Mostly dry. He amends. Nearby, an onion seller has arranged her goods in neat golden heaps beneath a slanted cover. She keeps wiping them with her apron, though onions are not known for needing polish. She tells everyone that onions guard against sickness, ill air, weak blood, and bad neighbours. No one can quite agree whether an onion worn in the pocket truly keeps fever away, but plenty of people carry one in winter, if only because it is cheaper than a physician and less alarming than a leech. A relic seller stands near the churchyard wall, his little table crowded with bits of cloth, tiny bones in glass, pewter badges, splinters said to be from holy places, and one cloudy vial that he claims contains water from a miraculous spring. The rain runs off his hat and onto his display, which seems unhelpful for a man selling sacred moisture. He insists the vial is stronger if kept near the heart. The clerk murmurs that most things are stronger if kept away from puddles. The pilgrim bends over the badges with interest. There are shells, keys, tiny saints, crossed staffs, and a little bell-shaped token from an abbey far to the north. A badge pinned to hat or cloak tells the world where one has prayed, or where one intends people to believe one has prayed. Some swear that certain badges protect travellers from storms, thieves, and bad ale. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether the protection depends on faith, metal, or the merchant's ability to praise both. The relic seller notices your gaze and lifts a small object wrapped in faded blue silk. Fragment of a Roman saint's sandal, he says. The clerk blinks. A Roman saint. Very old, says the seller. That is not the same thing. In rain, the seller replies. Old is enough. It is difficult to argue with that kind of confidence, though the suspicious monk, now standing beneath the church eaves with his wrapped wooden box held close, looks as if he would like to try and win by silence alone. You continue through the square. A fishmonger has not closed because smoked fish, unlike wool, does not fear water. He stands beside barrels of salted herring, smoked eel, and dark strips of something that may once have been cheerful. The smell is powerful enough to make the rain seem seasoned. He offers a small piece to the dog, who accepts it and immediately looks as if it has discovered religion. The monk frowns. Perhaps he disapproves of feeding animals in the market. Perhaps he regrets not standing closer. At another stall, a woman sells herbs bundled with string sage for the throat, lavender for sleep, rue for protection, betony for headaches, and yarrow for wounds. She has also hung rowan twigs under the awning, red berries bright against the grey evening. Some swear rowan keeps witches from souring milk or tangling horses' manes. Even now, it is hard to tell whether the people here believe this firmly, lightly, or only when the night is long and the cow looks suspicious. You buy nothing, but she presses a sprig of lavender into your hand after noticing your road-worn face. For rest, she says, or fleas. Depends which trouble finds you first. You tuck it into your cloak. Its scent rises faintly whenever you move, clean and purple in the wet dark. The market square has a stubborn life of its own. A cooper rolls a small barrel under shelter, muttering to it as if it has made poor choices. A knife grinder packs his wheel in oiled cloth. A woman selling coarse bread argues with a man over whether yesterday's loaf should cost today's coin. Two boys chase each other around the cross until one slips, sits down hard in the mud, and accepts his defeat with the stunned silence of youth meeting gravity. Above the square, the houses lean inward, their windows glowing amber through horn panes. Rain streaks the walls and gathers on carved beams blackened by age. From one upper room comes the soft thump of a loom. From another, a baby cries once, then is hushed. The town does not stop for rain, it contracts around it, drawing work and warmth closer beneath roof and cloth. The clerk stops beside a low stretch of old Roman wall at the market's edge. Water runs over its red tiles and pale stones, making each layer shine. There, he says. That may have been the part of a covered walk. If the old accounts are right, stalls once stood nearby even then. You imagine it Roman merchants on a rainy day, lifting jars of oil, weighing grain, selling hot food under awnings, arguing over wet cloth, praising goods too damp to deserve praise. Perhaps one man claimed his wool was dry as a bishop's sermon too, though bishops had not yet arrived to be useful in comparisons. The thought makes time feel round and strangely gentle. Markets change their words, but not their weather. The pilgrim tries to bargain for a badge and fails with admirable grace. The relic seller smiles like a man who has seen many spiritual journeys end in haggling. The monk drifts near, his wooden box still hidden under cloth. For a moment, the dog noses toward it, and the monk steps back sharply. "Leave it," he says. The dog sits at once, not obediently, but with the air of someone who has decided the box is boring. You notice, though, that the monk's hand remains tight on the bundle. The clerk notices too. Neither of you speaks. A bell rings from the church tower, the sound muted by rain yet broad enough to make the square pause. Heads turn slightly, a few lips move in prayer. The herb seller crosses herself with fingers stained green. The wool merchant uses the moment to pull another cover over his bales. Piety and business, you are learning, can share the same breath. The rain begins to come down harder, and one by one the market folk surrender. Canvas is folded, crates are lifted, cords are untied with cold fingers, coins vanish into purses, unsold onions are bundled into sacks. This saint at the cross watches it all with a wet stone patience that suggests he has seen worse and will not be writing a complaint. You stand a little longer beneath the awning of the herb stall, lavender in your cloak, smoked fish on the dog's breath, torchlight trembling across puddles. This square empties slowly, not dramatically, but like a tide drawing back. Footsteps fade. Wheels creak away. Voices sink behind doors. At last you turn toward the church and the cloister beyond, where the next bell hums faintly through rain and stone. The clerk gathers his robe close. The pilgrim adjusts his hat. The monk is already moving that way, his dark bundle pressed against him. And the dog, after one final glance at the fishmonger's barrels, follows. You leave the wet market square behind, its mud printed with boots, paws, wheels, and the small stubborn marks of a town that refuses to be washed clean of life. You follow the bell through the rain, leaving the market square to its puddles, its folded awnings, and the patient saint dripping at the cross. The churchyard opens ahead behind a low wall of slick stones, each one shining under the torchlight as if freshly pulled from a river. A narrow path leads between leaning grave markers, some carved with crosses, others plain and old enough that their names have softened into moss. The rain falls more quietly here. Or perhaps voices behind you have faded, leaving only the bell, the wet grass, and the slow hush of your own steps. The clerk walks beside you with his hood pulled low. The pilgrim follows, touching each badge on his hat as if counting small promises. The suspicious monk moves ahead with surprising speed for a man carrying a secret box in bad weather. The dog trots between you all, nose down, investigating churchyard smells with the seriousness of a scholar approaching a disputed manuscript. At the church door, the bell gives one final note, deep and round, and its sound seems to pass through your ribs before lifting into the rafters. You step inside. The air changes at once. It is colder than the hall, but stiller. It smells of damp stone, beeswax, old wood, wet wool, and faint incense clinging to the walls from earlier prayers. Candles burn before a side altar, where a small painted saint gazes outward with large solemn eyes. Someone has placed a bowl beneath a leak near the nave. Because even holy roofs must negotiate with rain. Beyond the church, through a side passage, lies the cloister. You pass beneath an arch where the stone has been worn smooth by generations of hands, and then you enter a covered walk surrounding a square of grass silvered by rain. Water falls from the open sky into the garth, pattering on herbs, stones, and the dark earth around a little well. The covered path keeps you dry enough, though wind pushes fine mist across your face. Along the inner wall, columns frame the rainy garden in a row of dim pictures. Monks move through the cloister like shadows wrapped in wool. One carries a lantern, another holds a stack of wax tablets beneath his cloak. A third sweeps water from the walkway with a twig broom, though the rain keeps sending more, making the work both hopeless and deeply medieval. No one can quite agree whether such patience is holiness, or simply what happens when a man is assigned a broom by an abbot. The bell rope hangs near a doorway, still quivering slightly from its recent labour. You imagine the bell high above, bronze and wet with cold, marking the hours for everyone's sleepers, cooks, guards, scribes, merchants, children, and travellers who have lost track of time under low clouds. In towns like this, bells do not merely announce prayer. They gather the day into pieces small enough for tired people to carry. The clerk leads you toward a small chamber off the cloister where the monks keep fragments found in the town, a cracked Roman tile. 2 coins, green with age, a piece of carved stone, and a thin slab marked with Latin letters. The room is lit by a single lamp and smells of dust, wax, and damp vellum. A monk with white brows sits at a table, carefully wrapping a shard of red tile in linen. He looks up as you enter, studies your muddy boots, then studies the dog, who has somehow slipped in behind you. Not in the archive, the old monk says. The dog sits. The old monk sighs, which seems to count as permission. On the table lies a broken inscription. The letters are clear in places, vanished in others. The clerk bends over it with visible affection. He tells you it may name a bath, a guild, a magistrate, or someone's dead uncle. Those who tell the tale never fully agree because half the stone is missing and the other half enjoys being mysterious. The old monk says some fragments were pulled from the Roman wall near the market. Others found beneath the church floor when repairs were made after a hard winter. You run your fingers near, not on the stone. Cold rises from it. The carved grooves hold tiny shadows. Once, someone made these letters expecting them to be read. Now people puzzle over them in a rain-bound cloister while a dog behaves badly near the archive shelves. History, you think, has a quiet sense of humour. The old monk shows another object, a small bronze pin shaped like a leaf. It is delicate, green at the edges, and bent slightly at the tip. Some swear it belonged to a Roman lady who lived beside the bathhouse. Others insist it fastened a soldier's cloak. Even now it's hard to tell whether either story is true, but the pin rests on its linen cloth with the dignity of something that has survived every argument about it. From the cloister walk comes the sound of chanting. Low voices rise and fall in a pattern older than any one monk, older than the cracked tiles and the repaired roof, older perhaps in feeling than the town itself. The rain answers from the garden. Drop after drop slips from the eaves into a stone channel, and the channel carries the water toward a drain carved with the little beast's head. The beast looks mildly surprised to spend eternity swallowing rainwater. You stand in the doorway and listen. The chant is not grand. It is human, breath-bound, slightly uneven, softened by cold throats and damp stone. Yet it fills the cloister with a deep calm. The monk with the secret bundle kneels in the church beyond, his covered box placed before him. For the first time, his shoulders seem less tense. Perhaps he carries a relic after all. Perhaps he carries something more ordinary. No one asks. In this place, silence is allowed to keep its cloak. The old monk speaks quietly to the clerk about Roman rainy days. He says he has read that people in old towns sheltered under porticos, visited baths, played games with counters, and listened to readings when weather kept them indoors. He also says he doubts they were much different from anyone else. Rain makes philosophers of those who are dry and grumblers of those who are not. This seems like a fair summary of human history. A younger monk brings a tray of warm spiced ale for the visitors, thin but fragrant with a little cinnamon and honey saved for guests. You hold the cup in both hands and feel the heat soak into your palms. The pilgrim closes his eyes after one sip, as if blessing and beverage have reached him at the same time. The dog receives nothing, which it accepts with visible disappointment. The old monk points to a shelf where rolled parchments rest beside bits of tile. We keep what we can, he says, not because we understand all of it. The words settle gently. Outside, rain blurs the cloister garth into silver and green. Inside, fragments of Rome sleep beside psalters, wax tablets, broken seals, and a broom leaning in the corner. The world feels layered here, empire beneath monastery, old road beneath muddy lane, forgotten bath beneath grain store, Latin carved in stone beneath Latin sung in prayer. Another bell begins somewhere deeper in the building, smaller and higher than the first. The monks move as if drawn by thread. The clerk bows his head. The pilgrim follows. You linger half a breath longer beside the table, looking at the bronze pin, the cracked tile, the unreadable stone. Then you turn back into the cloister walk. The rain is still falling into the open square of grass. Candles flicker in the church. The monk with the bundle remains kneeling in shadow. The dog presses briefly against your leg, warm and damp and ordinary. And while the bell's last note fades into the wet evening, you feel the town's old memories gathering around you, not loudly, not as ghosts, but as small sheltered things kept safe from the rain. You leave the cloister with the bell still fading behind you, its last note dissolving into the rain like honey stirred into dark ale. The church door closes softly at your back, and at once the world grows wider, wetter, and less certain. The path beyond the churchyard slopes down toward the road outside the town wall, where puddles have gathered in every hollow, and the mud lies smooth under torchlight, marked by hooves, cartwheels, boots, and the delicate wandering signatures of hens who clearly believe all weather is their personal business. The pilgrim walks beside you, his shell badge glistening on his hat. The clerk has returned to his chamber, called back by ink, candles, and the kind of work that waits with folded arms. The monk with the wrapped box remains somewhere in the church, swallowed by prayer or secrecy. The dog, naturally, has chosen you again, trotting at your heel with that calm conviction animals have when they've made a decision no human is important enough to question. Near the gate, rainwater runs in small streams along the lane. A torch spits in its iron bracket. The guard with the dried apple habit leans under the awning and watches the road as though expecting it to apologize. Beyond the arch, the countryside lies dim and silver, fields softened by mist, hedges black against the wet dusk, and the old Roman road stretching away beneath a skin of water. You do not go far, only a little beyond the wall, where travellers often pause before entering town or leaving it behind. There, beside a shallow ditch, something catches the torchlight, a small dull gleam half buried in mud. The dog noses toward it first, then sneezes, perhaps overwhelmed by history or simply by ditch water. You crouch and draw the thing free with cold fingers. It is a pilgrim badge, bent and mudded, shaped like a tiny bell or perhaps a tower. Pewter, cheap but carefully cast. A pin remains on the back, twisted loose. You wipe it with the edge of your cloak, which is already so wet and stained that one more patch of mud hardly seems a moral issue. The pilgrim leans close. Abbey badge, he says. North Road. Maybe. No one can quite agree whether such badges protect the wearer, prove the journey, or merely help strangers begin conversations near bad weather. But people pin them to hats, cloaks, satchels, even horse harnesses, carrying small metal memories from shrine to shrine. Some swear a badge touched to a saint's relic can keep fever from a household for a year. Others say it keeps merchants honest, which would be the greater miracle. You turn the badge over in your palm. Rain gathers in its little grooves. It feels strangely intimate, this lost object, as if someone's hope has slipped loose and fallen into the road. Perhaps the owner passed through before sunset, tired and hungry, dreaming of the guest hall's smoky warmth. Perhaps they left town in the rain, bound for the abbey, the coast, or some manor court where an unpaid debt waits patiently. Those who tell the tale never fully agree what becomes of lost pilgrim tokens. Some say they should be hung at the nearest shrine. Some say returned if the owner can be found. Some say keeping one invites the saint to follow you around making suggestions. The guard bends over from beneath the awning. Found another. Another asks the pilgrim. The guard jerks his chin toward the road. Rain pulls things up. Badges, horseshoe nails, old coins, bones of chickens, sometimes Roman bits. Last winter a boy found a little bronze face out there. What kind of face offended? That seems plausible for something dug out of a medieval road. The guard says travellers lose more in rain than in battle buckles, knives, patience, religion, and once an entire sack of turnips that floated down the ditch like a small vegetable pilgrimage. He points to a roadside shrine just beyond the gate, where a wooden cross stands beneath a slanted roof of shingles. Little offerings hang from it: ribbons, a cracked wooden bead, a strip of linen, a horseshoe nail, and now, perhaps, this badge. You carry it there. The shrine smells of wet wood, old wax, and earth. A small clay lamp sits cold in a niche, its wick drowned. Someone has placed a sprig of rowan beside it, red berries beaded with rain. The pilgrim bows his head. You hang the badge on a nail beneath the little roof, where it taps softly against the wood whenever the wind moves. For a moment, the rain seems quieter, not gone, never that, but held at a respectful distance. The badge swings, dull and silver grey. Another tiny story added to the shrine's collection of uncertain prayers. You think of Roman travellers on rainy roads, carrying tokens of household gods, charms, letters, coins, or nothing but a stubborn desire to reach shelter. You think of medieval pilgrims crossing fields with wet hems and sore feet, measuring devotion in blisters. Time changes the names of holy places, but the road keeps asking the same price. The dog sits beside the shrine and looks toward the ditch, what now murmurs the pilgrim. The dog stands, trots 2 steps, and paws at a clump of grass. You almost laugh. If dogs truly see what men miss, this one mostly sees mud worth disturbing. Still, you follow. Beneath the grass lies not treasure, not relic, not Roman coin, but a broken cart peg, swollen from rain and useless to everyone except the dog, who appears proud of the discovery. The pilgrim nods gravely, a sign, of what? That carts break, this is also difficult to dispute. The guard calls that the gate will be shut soon if the rain worsens. You and the pilgrim turn back toward the arch. Behind you, the badge continues tapping at the shrine, a small metal heartbeat in the wet dusk. You wonder whether its owner will come searching, whether they will notice its absence only miles away, or whether, by morning, the town will already have invented a story, a vanished pilgrim, a saint's warning, a dog that found a holy token, a traveller who hung it in the rain. Stories here grow the way moss grows on stones, slowly, quietly, and everywhere there is damp. As you pass beneath the gate, the guard lowers the outer bar a little, not closing it yet, only reminding the night that men have rules. Inside the wall, the town glows in patches, lanterns at doors, candles at windows, torchlight on wet plaster. The market square lies nearly empty now, but the puddles still hold trembling reflections of roofs and saints and old Roman stones. You touch the lavender tucked in your cloak. Its scent rises faintly, almost lost beneath rain and smoke. The pilgrim beside you touches the badges on his hat again, perhaps checking that none have joined the road on their own. The dog shakes water from its ears and trots ahead toward the hall, confident that all paths, sacred or otherwise, should end near supper crumbs. You follow slowly, carrying the image of the lost badge swinging beneath the shrine roof. It feels like a small promise made on behalf of someone you may never meet. The bell from the church sounds once more, softer now, and the rain answers in every gutter, every roof edge, every ancient seam of stone. The town folds itself around you again, damp and watchful, while behind the gate the road glimmers into darkness. You return to the hall, but the hall has changed in the way rooms change after rain. Supper and a little mystery. It is warmer, dimmer, heavier with smoke, and full of people who have begun to believe the night will not ask much more of them. Wet cloaks hang from pegs like tired beasts. The rushes underfoot have been turned and trampled until they smell of grass, hearth ash, and the long damp patience of travellers. The half-burned candle near the arcade has sagged lower, its wax pooled like pale cream on the table. The dog reaches the door before you and slips inside with the confidence of a creature who has never paid for lodging and never intends to begin. You follow with the pilgrim, both of you bringing in a breath of rain that makes several heads turn. The woman with the linen coif looks at your muddy boots, then at the dog's muddy paws, and gives you both the same expression, which feels fair. The alehouse corner of the hall is awake now. A small barrel has been opened near the hearth, and cups pass from hand to hand. The carter sits with his boots stretched toward the fire. The wool merchant has come in from the square, still insisting his goods are mostly dry. The relic seller occupies a bench near the wall, carefully drying his questionable holy objects with a cloth. No one can quite agree whether this makes them more sacred or less convincing. You settle beneath the old arcade again. The pilgrim lowers himself beside you with a sigh so deep it seems to have begun on the road hours ago. The dog curls under the bench, then uncurls, then circles twice, then lies down exactly where it started, having performed the ancient ritual of making a floor spiritually acceptable. Across the hall, the suspicious monk enters at last. His hood is damp, his face pale in the firelight, and the wrapped wooden box is still under his arm. The room notices without seeming to notice. Eyes slide away too quickly. Cups pause near mouths. The relic seller watches with professional jealousy. The woman with the coif brings the monk a cup of ale. For the chill, she says. He hesitates, then takes it. Bless you. Bless the roof if you have influence, she replies. A few soft laughs stir the room. The monk sits near the hearth but keeps the box on his lap. The dog lifts its head, stares at the bundle, and gives one quiet huff. Everyone hears it. Of course everyone hears it. In a smoky hall at night, one dog huff can become evidence. Dogs see what men miss, the monk says again, more softly. The carter groans, and men see dogs making trouble. Still, the mood is gentle. Rain presses at the shutters, and the ale moves slowly through the room, warming tongues without sharpening them too much. The clerk arrives from his chamber, rubbing ink from one finger with no success. He sits near you and accepts a cup. His eyes are tired, but his curiosity has survived the day intact, which is either admirable or dangerous. The talk turns, naturally, to Rome. Rain has trapped you all together, and the old Roman stones seem to listen from the walls. The clerk tells of baths, heated floors, tiled roofs, and covered walks where citizens could pass from shop to shop without soaking their sandals. The carter says any people clever enough to build covered walks should have passed the idea along more clearly. The wool merchant agrees, especially on behalf of wool. The relic seller claims Romans carried charms against storms. The monk says softly that pagans feared what they did not understand. And Christians do not ask the woman with the coif. The monk looks into his ale. Christians have better songs. This answer is accepted because no one wishes to begin theology while damp. Some swear that old Roman ruins are restless in rain, that water wakes the stones and draws memories up through cracks like worms after a storm. The pilgrim says he once slept beside a Roman milestone and dreamed of marching feet. The carter says he once slept beside a milestone and dreamed of cheese. So perhaps dreams are not reliable witnesses. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether ruins remember people, or people lend memory to ruins because silence makes them uneasy. The monk's fingers tighten on the box. At last the relic seller, unable to endure another man's mystery, nods toward it. Fine case. The monk says nothing. Reliquary, the seller asks. The woman with the coif mutters, "Here we go." The monk slowly unwraps the cloth. Beneath it is a small wooden casket, dark with age, bound in iron, its lid carved with a cross and a border of curling leaves. It is handsome but worn, the sort of object that seems to have travelled through many hands, many roads, and perhaps several versions of the truth. Inside, resting on linen, is not a bone, not gold, not a jewel, but a broken piece of red tile marked by shallow lines. The room leans closer despite itself. From a Roman roof, the monk says, found near the abbey, kept because it bears a sign. The clerk rises and bends near it. The lines might be letters, they might be scratches, they might be the work of a careless tool, a bored child, or a monk with a hopeful imagination. Even now, it is hard to tell whether the mark is ancient meaning or ordinary damage made important by candlelight. The monk says some believe the tile once sheltered a house where a holy man stayed during persecution. The relic seller's eyebrows lift, calculating. The clerk remains polite, which is often more devastating than argument, and others, the monk closes the lid. Others believe less. This is the simplest honest thing he has said all night. The hall relaxes. No miracle bursts from the casket. No ghost objects. No Roman voice speaks through the smoke to complain about the ale. The tile is only a tile, and also perhaps more than a tile, because people have carried it carefully, wrapped it against rain, argued over it, prayed beside it, and let it gather stories as wool gathers burrs. You sip your ale, it is sour, smoky, and comforting. which seems to be the hall's entire philosophy in liquid form. The dog settles again, apparently satisfied that the mysterious box does not contain sausage. Outside, rain pours from the roof. Inside, people begin speaking at once, more softly now, telling small tales of things found in fields, coins, brooches, bones, carved stones, a pot full of blackened grain, a ring lost and found after 3 generations. Though no one can quite explain the arithmetic of that claim. The alehouse grows drowsy. A man hums near the fire, the pilgrim rubs his feet, the clerk traces invisible letters on the table with one ink-stained finger. The monk holds the box less tightly now, the relic seller, perhaps inspired, quietly rewraps his own wares with greater dignity. You lean back against the old arcade, the same stone that sheltered you from the first cold rain, and feel the night deepen around the hall. There is no great revelation here, only warmth, wet wool, doubtful relics, tired jokes, and the strange comfort of shared shelter. On rainy days, Romans may have gone to baths, played games, read letters, eaten hot food, and complained under porticos. Tonight, you sit beneath their stones while medieval travellers do much the same in another tongue. The dog sighs, the candle lowers, the rain keeps time on the roof, and the alehouse of leaking roofs, with all its smoke and suspicion and small human kindness, holds you quietly in its amber dark. By the time you leave the alehouse warmth, the town has become almost entirely sound and shadow. Rain speaks from every roof edge, every gutter, every puddle in the lane. It whispers down plaster walls, taps on shutterboards, and falls from the jutting upper stories in steady silver threads. The air outside is cold enough to make your full belly seem like a distant rumour. You pull your cloak close, tucking the little sprig of lavender deeper into its fold, and step after the pilgrim, the clerk, the monk, and, of course, the dog, who appears to consider itself necessary to all public business. The hall door closes behind you with a low thud, muting the smoke, the ale, the voices, and the half-burned candle glow. Ahead, the lane leads away from the square toward the town's outer edge, where a roadside shrine stands beyond the gate among old Roman stones. You visited it earlier in the rain, when the lost badge swung beneath its little roof, but now dusk has darkened into night, and places already seen can change their faces after the bells. A watchman lets you pass beneath the gate arch with a doubtful look. He carries a lantern in one hand and a spear in the other, though the lantern seems more useful against the night and the spear more useful against his own confidence. "Not far," he says. "Road's foul." The carter, who has joined you for reasons no one has explained, replies, "The road was foul at noon." "Aye," says the watchman, "now it has had practice." Beyond the gate, the world opens into mist. Fields lie low and black beneath the rain, hedges drip. The Roman road runs under your boots, still stubbornly straight beneath mud and water, as if refusing to admit that centuries of carts, hooves, weeds, and weather have done it any harm. On either side, broken stones jut from the grass-old foundations, old walls, old meanings worn down until even the clerk cannot give them names with certainty. The shrine waits a short way off, its small roof shining wet in the lantern light. The lost pilgrim badge still hangs there, tapping softly against the wood. Tap, pause, tap. It sounds almost intentional, like a tiny bell calling only to those who are already listening. No one can quite agree whether roadside shrines are safer at night or stranger, whether prayers said beside them travel faster, or whether the saints prefer visitors who are sensible enough to stay indoors. Yet people come anyway. They leave ribbons, pins, beads, scraps of cloth, and wishes too small or too private for church walls. You stand beneath the shrine roof, close enough to avoid the worst of the rain. The monk sets his covered box on a flat Roman stone nearby. The clerk lifts the lantern toward the stone, revealing faint tool marks and a line of shallow carving, almost erased by time. It might have been part of a threshold. It might have belonged to a bathhouse wall. It might have been dragged here by someone who simply needed a good flat stone and cared nothing for the dignity of empire. Some swear these stones once lined a grand road where Roman officers rode in red cloaks, where merchants drove carts loaded with oil, wine, pots, and gossip, where rainy days sent travellers ducking beneath way stations and in roofs. Others say the ruins are just ruins, useful for building walls, weighing thatch, and giving old men something to point at. Even now, it is hard to tell whether the past is hidden in such places or merely invited there by candlelight and weather. The pilgrim kneels briefly, touching 2 fingers to the wet wood of the shrine. He murmurs a prayer for the owner of the badge. The words are nearly lost beneath the rain. The dog sits beside him, ears pricked, looking into the dark ditch with great interest. You hope it has not discovered another broken cart peg of spiritual importance. The clerk, meanwhile, examines the Roman stones. His robe hem is soaked, but curiosity seems to keep him warmer than wool. "Look here," he says, pointing to a low block half buried in the grass. "This may have been reused. See the edge, too clean for field stone." The carter leans over. It is a rock, a carved rock, a wet carved rock. The clerk sighs with the patience of scholarship under poor conditions. All learning begins somewhere, and often ends in wet shoes, says the carter. The monk says nothing, but he uncovers his casket again. In the lantern light, the old red tile within looks darker, almost brown, its scratched lines catching water-bright glimmers. He places it for a moment near the shrine, not as a display this time, but as an offering of attention. The tile, the badge, the Roman stone, the wooden cross, all of them sit together under the rain, belonging to different ages and yet sharing the same small roof of human hope. You feel the quiet of it. Not silence, because the rain will not allow silence, but a hush beneath the sound. The town gate glows behind you. From within the walls, a bell rings once, perhaps marking the hour, perhaps calling the last prayers before night. Its sound drifts over the road, softened by mist, and touches the shrine like a hand. The old belief, the pilgrim tells you, is that rain falling on a shrine roof and running into the earth carries petitions downward, where old roots and older bones remember them. The clerk says he has never seen this written. The pilgrim answers that not everything true has the leisure to become a document. The monk gives a small nod at that, and even the clerk lets the argument rest. You look beyond the shrine, where the road vanishes into darkness. Somewhere out there, other travellers are perhaps sheltering beneath trees, under carts, in barns, beside smoking fires, waiting for dawn with wet blankets and unhappy feet. Somewhere, if imagination is allowed its candle, ancient Romans once waited out rainy evenings in roadside mansions, warming themselves by braziers, drying cloaks, oiling sandals, arguing over dice, listening to rain on tile. No one can quite agree whether their evenings were more comfortable than yours, though heated floors certainly suggest they had certain advantages. The dog suddenly rises and gives one low bark. Everyone stills. The sound fades into the ditch, the hedges, the rain. The watchman near the gate lifts his lantern. The monk gathers his box. The pilgrim touches his badges. You listen hard, but hear only water moving through grass and the slow drip from the shrine roof. Then a shape emerges from the dark, not ghost, not thief, not Roman soldier, but a stray donkey nosing along the roadside with a mournful expression of an animal that has never approved of human planning. The carter exhales. That beast belongs to Miller Tom. The donkey looks at him with deep personal disappointment and continues chewing wet hedge. The tension dissolves softly, almost kindly. Someone laughs under their breath. The monk mutters what may be a prayer or may be irritation. The dog appears proud of having defended you all from livestock. You linger only a little longer. The rain has found its way through your cloak, and the night is growing colder. The pilgrim adjusts the lost badge so it hangs more securely beneath the shrine roof. The clerk takes one last look at the Roman stones. The monk wraps his box again. You touch the wet wood of the shrine with your fingertips, not asking for anything grand, only dry rest, safe walls, and perhaps a morning with less mud. Then you turn back toward the town gate. The road glimmers behind you, straight and ancient beneath water. The shrine fades into mist, its small badge tapping like a memory. Ahead, the gatehouse waits with torchlight under the arch, and beyond it, the town's smoky roofs lean close together against the rain. You walk slowly back, boots heavy, shoulders damp, dog at your side, carrying with you the sense that the rainy night has gathered Roman stones, medieval prayers, doubtful relics, and ordinary cold hands into one quiet tale. You pass back beneath the gate just as the watchmen begin to close the town for the night. The great wooden leaves groan inward on iron hinges, swollen by rain and old age, and the sound rolls through the arch like a tired beast settling down in straw. One man lifts the lantern, another sets his shoulder against the wet timber. A third waits with the heavy bar, both hands wrapped around it, as if holding a piece of the forest itself. When the gate meets, the whole town seems to exhale. The bar drops into place with a deep wooden thud. Outside, the Roman road, the roadside shrine, the lost badge, and Miller Tom's disappointed donkey disappear into mist and darkness. Inside, torchlight trembles against the stone arch, and rain drips steadily from the murder holes overhead into puddles at your feet. The dog sniffs the closed gate, accepts the decision of civic authority, and sneezes. The head watchman, a broad man with a beard damp enough to qualify as weather, nods toward the stair. Come up if you want the fire. Hall's crowded. So you climb the narrow steps within the gatehouse wall, one hand brushing cold stone, the other lifting your cloak clear of your boots. The stairs spiral tightly, built for defence rather than comfort, and each step is uneven in its own private way. At the top, a low chamber opens beneath heavy beams. A small fire burns in a clay-lined hearth. Spears lean in a corner. Iron keys hang from a peg, large and dark, each one able to command doors, cells, storehouses, or simply the imagination of anyone who sees them. The room smells of wet wool, smoke, oiled leather, and onions roasted near the coals. A bench runs along the wall. A shuttered slit window looks out over the road, though tonight it shows only rain and a trembling smear of lantern light below. You sit near the fire, careful not to crowd it, and the dog lies across your boots as if claiming you against draughts. The watchmen settle around you. One mends a strap, one sharpens a small knife with slow, even strokes. One turns an onion in the ashes using the tip of his dagger. which is probably not what the smith intended. But tools in medieval hands often live complicated lives. The broad watchman takes down the ring of keys and counts them under his breath. Some swear that keys left uncounted at night invite thieves, spirits, or forgetfulness. No one can quite agree which is worst. Below, rain beats on the gate roof. Above, the wind pushes against the tower. The whole place creaks gently, not dangerously, but like an old man complaining while doing his duty. You warm your hands and listen as the watchmen speak in low voices about tolls, lost animals, wet merchants, and whether the western ditch will overflow by morning. One of them asks about the shrine, and the pilgrim tells of the badge you found in the mud. The watchmen nod as if this is the kind of thing rain does loosen small objects, old memories, and inconvenient questions. The broad one says a pilgrim vanished on that road years ago, though those who tell the tale never fully agree whether he vanished, eloped, joined a monastery, or simply found a better town with drier bread. The clerk, who has joined you despite claiming he was finished with the night, sits near the wall with his hands tucked into his sleeves. He studies the keys with interest. Roman gates had locks too, he says softly. Bolts, bars, ironwork, some very fine. The carter, half asleep on the bench, opens one eye. Did Romans also sit awake in wet towers waiting for donkeys to behave? Almost certainly, says the clerk. That comforts everyone more than it should. The monk sits apart, his box beside him under his cloak. In the firelight, he looks less suspicious and more simply tired. Rain has a way of reducing people to their essential truths: hunger, chill, sore feet, and the need for somewhere to put down what they carry. He finally unwraps the casket enough to check that no water has reached the tile. Satisfied, he covers it again. The watchman with the knife says he once heard that Roman soldiers played board games while guarding gates on rainy nights, scratching lines into stone and using pebbles for counters. The clerk says this is quite possible. The broad watchman looks at the damp floor, then at a handful of beans in a bowl. We have beans, he says. So a game is made. A board is scratched with charcoal onto a flat plank. Beans become armies, or merchants, or thieves, depending on who explains the rules. No one can quite agree how to play, which makes it resemble many ancient games and nearly all local customs. You move one bean when told. The carter accuses the pilgrim of cheating. The pilgrim says he cannot be cheating because he does not understand the game. The broad watchman says that is often the safest method. The dog watches the beans with dangerous attention until you move them higher. The fire burns low and steady. The roasted onion is shared, passed from knife point to bread crust, sweet and hot enough to make your eyes water. Someone brings out a small flask of herbal cordial, sharp with fennel and something bitter. It is said to keep night damp from settling in the chest. Even now, it is hard to tell whether it heals, warms, or simply distracts the mouth from complaining. Through the slit window, you glimpse the road beyond the gate whenever lightning pales the clouds far away. Not a storm directly overhead, only a faint pulse in the west. The Roman road shines straight and empty. The shrine roof is just visible, a black triangle in rain. Somewhere near it, perhaps, the lost badge taps in the wind. The broad watchman tells a tale of a Roman coin found between the gate stones, bearing a face with a crown of spikes. He says his grandmother kept it under a bowl during thunderstorms to keep lightning from the house. The clerk gently suggests it was likely an emperor's head. The watchman shrugs. Emperor or charm, it did no harm. That is the town's wisdom in miniature. The hour grows late. Conversation thins. The monk murmurs a prayer. The pilgrim dozes sitting up, his chin dipping toward his chest. The carter snores once, denies it without waking, and snores again. The watchmen continue their quiet duties, checking the latch, counting keys, feeding the fire, listening beyond the gate for sounds that do not belong. You sit with your back against the wall, feeling cold stone through your cloak and fire warmth across your knees. The gatehouse holds the night at bay, not perfectly, but faithfully. Rain enters in drops, wind enters in whispers, darkness peers through the slit window, yet still the bar lies across the gate. The keys hang from their peg, the fire breathes in the hearth, and tired people keep watch. You think again of rainy Romans behind their own gates, soldiers in cloaks, lamps burning, dice clicking, water running down stone. Perhaps they too listened for hooves in the dark. Perhaps they too shared onions, jokes, and doubtful remedies. Perhaps one of them scratched a game into a plank and insisted the rules were obvious. The bell sounds from the church, low and far, marking the night hour. Its note passes over the roofs and reaches the gatehouse softened by rain. One watchman crosses himself, another yawns. The dog shifts in its sleep, pressing warmer against your feet. And there, above the closed gate, with iron keys nearby and wet cloaks steaming gently around the fire, you let the long rainy night grow slow, guarded and deep. Dawn comes without sunrise. It arrives as a thinning of the dark, a grey loosening beyond the slit window, a soft change in the rain's colour from black to pewter. You wake with your back stiff against the gatehouse wall, and the dog still sprawled across your boots, warm as a small damp hearthrug. The fire has sunk to red coals. The watchmen move quietly, rubbing their eyes, tightening belts, lifting the bar from the gate with the slow care of men who have not slept enough to enjoy heavy timber. The town outside stirs under pale rain. Shutters open. Smoke begins to rise from roofs. Somewhere a rooster crows as if personally responsible for the morning, though the clouds pay him no attention. The church bell sounds prime, clear and wet, calling the town into another day of mud, labour, prayer, bargaining, and pretending that wool will eventually dry. You descend the narrow stair into the archway. Cold air meets your face. The gate opens onto the Roman road, still shining beneath water, and the roadside shrine stands faint in the mist. The lost pilgrim badge still hangs beneath its little roof, tapping more slowly now. No one can quite agree whether objects left at shrines belong to the saint, the finder, or the next person with cold fingers and poor manners, but this one remains undisturbed. In the market square, people gather around a patch of mud near the old Roman wall. A boy with a wooden shovel has scraped away washed soil and found something bright beneath a line of red tile, slick and clean from the rain. The clerk kneels already, ink-stained fingers replaced by mud-stained ones, looking happier than anyone should look before breakfast. The old monk from the cloister stands beside him, holding his robe clear with one hand and failing. You crouch near them. More tiles appear under the mud, set in a neat pattern, red against pale mortar. They may be part of a floor, a drain cover, or a threshold from some vanished Roman building. Some swear rain reveals what dry days hide, softening earth until the past lifts its face. Others say rain merely makes holes where people then imagine importance. Even now, it is hard to tell whether discovery begins in the ground or in the hopeful eye. The carter brings a spade. The wool merchant brings advice. The woman with the linen coif brings bread and tells everyone not to break what they do not understand, which is wise counsel for tiles, hearts, and local government. The dog sniffs the exposed edge and sneezes with scholarly authority. Slowly, carefully, the mud is cleared. A shallow channel appears beside the tiles, carrying rainwater away from the wall. The clerk says it may be Roman drainage. The carter looks impressed despite himself. They did know rain. Then, they knew rain very well, says the clerk, and still left us this road, perhaps as a warning. A few people laugh softly, their breath clouding in the cold dawn. The old monk touches the edge of one tile with a gloved finger. Leave it covered after, he says. Better sleeping than stolen. So the town studies the little red line as if it were a message. Perhaps it is. Perhaps it says only that people once stood here, laid floors, carried water, complained of weather, and trusted their work to outlast them. Your boots sink in the mud beside it. Rain dots your hands. The bell fades overhead. After a while, the woman passes you a heel of bread, still warm from the oven. You eat it standing beside Roman tiles in a medieval square while the dog watches for crumbs with unbroken faith. The morning is cold, damp, and ordinary, yet under the mud, something bright has waited all night to be seen. By mid-morning, the rain has not stopped, but it has become finer, quieter, more like a grey veil than a punishment. The exposed Roman tiles near the market wall are covered again with boards and straw, as the old monk advised, and the clerk stands over them a moment longer with the expression of a man leaving a friend asleep. Then the bell sounds from the church, and the town begins drifting toward the manor hall, because the weather has driven the day's court indoors. You follow with the others through a lane slick with mud and crushed rushes. The manor hall stands near the upper edge of town, broad-beamed and stern, its oak door bound with iron straps. Inside, the air smells of damp wool, old smoke, beeswax, and wet leather. Rushes cover the floor, though they are already losing their battle against everyone's boots. A long table has been set near the hearth, where the steward sits with a roll of parchment, a knife for trimming quills, and the tired face of a man preparing to hear many small grievances presented as world-ending tragedies. The dog slips in behind you and immediately lies beneath a bench, as if summoned for legal witness. The court begins with a dispute over a pig. No one can quite agree whether the pig escaped into the cabbage patch, was invited by poor fencing, or possessed the rare legal talent of being both guilty and delicious-looking. The woman who owns the cabbages speaks firmly. The man who owns the pig speaks louder. The steward listens, marks the roll, and fines the pig's owner 2 small coins and 1 promise to mend the fence before Sunday. The carter whispers that Roman courts must have been grander. The clerk whispers back that Roman courts also had people arguing over pigs, only in better Latin. Next comes a complaint about a broken cartwheel left near the church path, which the pilgrim recognises with mild embarrassment as the same road where you found the badge. A boy claims he tripped on it. His mother claims the wheel was a danger to Christian feet. The cart owner claims rain moved it. The steward looks at him for a long moment, because even in a world of saints, charms, and old Roman ghosts, blaming weather for relocating a wheel is ambitious. Some swear that carrying a bent nail from a broken wheel protects travellers from accidents. Others say it only makes your pouch heavier. Even now, it is hard to tell whether such customs survive because they work, or because people prefer a charm to the feeling that roads are simply unfair. The monk sits near the wall, his wooden casket resting beside him, watching the proceedings with grave patience. The relic seller sits 2 benches away and watches the casket with less holy patience. The woman with the linen coifers come too, carrying a basket of bread and pretending she's not listening to every word. Everyone listens in Manor Court. That is half the purpose. A widow brings a matter of unpaid ale. 2 brothers argue over a strip of meadow so narrow a goose could dispute it more gracefully. A baker is accused of selling loaves too light, and the steward orders the town weights brought out. The baker insists the damp air makes bread shrink. The hall receives this claim with respectful silence, the way people receive a prayer they do not expect be answered. Rain taps steadily on the roof. Smoke darkens the rafters. The steward's quill scratches. Beside the hearth, an old woman warms her hands and mutters that in her youth disputes were settled faster, though no one asks whether they were settled better. The dog sighs under the bench, perhaps bored by human law, which lacks the clarity of bones and crumbs. As the morning wears on, the court turns to market tolls. The wool merchant protests that rain ruined trade, and therefore tolls should be softened. The steward says the Lord's rights do not melt. The clerk, standing nearby to help with names and sums, keeps his face still, though you see the corner of his mouth twitch. The wool merchant argues that even Roman law allowed for hardship. The clerk asks where he learned this. The wool merchant says, "People say." Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether people say is the oldest law in the world, but it is certainly the most frequently cited. A small chest of coins sits open on the table. Beside it are tally sticks, notched carefully and split so debtor and lord may each keep a matching half. It is a plain object, but clever wood remembering what men might forget, or pretend to forget. The steward holds one up, reads the notches with his thumb, and gives judgment. You think of Roman tablets, wax marks, carved inscriptions. The clerks copied rainy day tales. Every age finds a way to trap memory in marks, then argues over what the marks mean. Near noon, the court pauses, bread is passed, ale is poured, a charm against toothache is discussed by the hearth, a thread knotted 9 times, while naming 3 saints and 1 troublesome tooth. The pilgrim claims he has seen it work. The carter says he has seen teeth fall out without help. The woman with the coif says both men should chew less loudly. You sit back, warm on one side from the fire and cold on the other from the hall's draughts. The rain has forced everyone indoors, and so the town's ordinary life gathers in one place. Law, gossip, hunger, superstition, account-keeping, old grudges, wet cloaks, and the soft patience of people waiting their turn. It is not grand, yet it feels complete. The Romans may have had magistrates, tablets, polished floors, and citizens sheltering from rain beneath tiled roofs. Here, beneath soot-black rafters, the same human weather continues. At last, the steward strikes the table lightly with the handle of his knife, ending the day's session. People rise, muttering, satisfied or not, which is the usual measure of justice. The pig owner pays. The baker retrieves his loaves with wounded dignity. The wool merchant leaves still damp in both cloth and spirit. You step toward the door with the dog at your heels. Behind you, the clerk helps roll the parchment, the steward counts the coins, and the monk lifts his casket once more. Outside, the rain waits in the lane like an old acquaintance. You pull your cloak close, breathe in smoke and wet earth, and return to the slow-moving town, where even disputes seem softened by the weather. You leave the manor hall with the others, stepping from the smell of smoke, parchment, and small human quarrels back into the wet breath of the town. The rain has thinned almost to mist. yet every surface still shines as if newly made. The cobbles, the cart ruts, the leaning doorposts, the market cross, the old Roman wall with its red tiles hidden again beneath boards and straw. Water drips from roof edges in patient beads. Somewhere behind you, the pig dispute continues in mutters, proving that justice may end before resentment does. The clerk walks beside you, carrying the rolled record of the court beneath his cloak. The monk follows with his casket wrapped close. The pilgrim limps slightly but cheerfully, his badges clinking faintly. The dog moves among you like an appointed guide, pausing now and then to inspect puddles with the solemnity of an official surveyor. By the time afternoon fades toward evening, the town begins thinking again of supper. Smoke rises thicker from the roofs. A woman beats rain from a cloak against a post. A boy hauls a basket of damp rushes toward the guest hall, leaving a trail of grass stems in the mud. You follow the familiar lane back toward the old bathhouse storehouse, where the woman with the linen coif has said the ancient underfloor passages make a good dry place to warm jars, boots, and bones if the fire is coaxed properly. Inside, the chamber feels different from before. Earlier it was cold and secretive, full of herbs and grain. Now a small fire has been lit near the old hypocaust opening, not beneath the floor as the Romans once managed, but close enough that warmth breathes into the brick channels and returns faintly through cracks in the paving. It is not Roman engineering reborn. It is more like Roman engineering being politely haunted by a cooking fire. Still, after the rain, it feels miraculous. The air smells of barley, sage, smoke, damp wool, and apples warming in a clay pot. Sacks of grain line the wall. Bundles of herbs hang overhead, their shadows moving softly in the firelight. The poor-marked Roman tile rests near the little wooden cross, and the dog noses toward it again, perhaps checking whether its ancient cousin has moved. You sit on a low bench with your boots stretched toward the warmth. Steam rises faintly from the leather. The pilgrim settles beside you and sighs as if every mile he has ever walked has come to sit down too. The clerk kneels near the hypocaust opening, peering into the brick channel with affection. They sent hot air under the floor, he says, mostly to himself. Whole rooms warmed from below. The carter, who has appeared wherever warmth and food are likely, lowers himself onto a sack. Seems wasteful. Heat rises. Everyone knows that. Exactly, says the clerk. The carter considers this, then nods slowly, as if the Romans have finally made one sensible decision. No one can quite agree what ancient Romans truly did on rainy days. The clerk says they visited baths, read letters, played games, listened to poetry, ate warm food, and waited for streets to clear. The carter says that is just what sensible people do in any age, provided they can afford poetry and have somewhere to put the mud. The woman with the coif says they probably complained, because no people clever enough to build drains would fail to complain when drains clogged. The monk sits near the wall and finally places his casket on the floor between you all. He opens it, not with ceremony this time, but with a gentler weariness. The broken red tile lies within. In this room of Roman brick, it seems less strange, less like a relic, more like a child returned to a large old family. Some at the abbey say it sheltered a holy man. The monk says, some say it is only roof tile. And what do you say? Asks the pilgrim. The monk watches the firelight move along the iron binding. I say it kept rain off someone. For a while, no one speaks. That is enough. A roof tile does not need to be more than that to deserve respect in weather like this. The old storehouse keeper brings out a pot of thick supper beans, leeks, barley, and bits of smoked fish stirred through for salt. It is ladled into wooden bowls, and you hold yours close, letting the steam soften your face. Apples cooked with honey are passed after, along with coarse bread and ale. The food is plain, but the chamber's warmth changes it. Each spoonful feels slow, deep, and earned. Some swear that eating warm beans beside old Roman brick keeps winter aches from settling in the knees. Others say warm beans cause their own troubles and should not be praised too loudly indoors. Even now, it is hard to tell whether this is medical wisdom or household diplomacy. The clerk scratches a rough drawing of the hypocaust in spilled ash, showing the channels, the raised floor, the furnace. The carter improves it by adding a donkey. The pilgrim adds a saint. The dog steps on the whole design, leaving one perfect paw print across Roman technology and Christian devotion alike. The woman with the coif looks down, best drawing yet. Laughter rises softly, then fades into the crackle of the fire. Outside, rain continues, but here it is distant, held back by thick walls and older cleverness. You imagine the bathhouse alive again, steam rolling under arched ceilings, lamps glowing through vapour, sandals slapping on wet tile, voices echoing, someone telling a joke, someone else insisting the weather will clear by noon and being completely wrong. Perhaps a Roman citizen once sat just above this warm channel, eating bread, drying a cloak, grateful for heat beneath his feet. Perhaps he too believed his world solid and lasting. The fire burns lower. The monk closes the casket but leaves it beside him, no longer hidden. The clerk's ash drawing smears under a falling herb stem. The pilgrim dozes with his cup in both hands. The dog curls near the hypocaust opening, having discovered the finest place in the chamber with no education whatsoever. You lean back against the old wall. Its stones are cool behind you, but warmth gathers at your feet. Above, herbs sway in the faint draught. The paw-mark tile sits quietly near the cross. Grain sleeps in sacks where steam once rose. The room feels layered and tender Roman heat. Medieval hunger. Rain outside. Fire within. Stories passed from mouth to mouth because no one can bear to let old things fall entirely silent. And as evening settles deeper, you understand that a rainy day is not merely endured here. It is stored, like grain, like herbs, like memory in tile and ink. It becomes supper, shelter, argument, warmth, and the slow company of people waiting together for morning. When the last bowls are scraped and the fire near the old hypocaust sinks into a red, breathing glow, you leave the storehouse chamber slowly, as if stepping away from warmth requires negotiation. The dog rises first, stretches with great ceremony, and shakes one ear, ready to escort the entire town if crumbs might be involved. The monk closes his casket and wraps it carefully, though not so tightly as before. The clerk takes one last look at the ash-smudged drawing on the floor, now blurred by paw print, boot mark, and falling herb dust, and smiles as if this too belongs in the record. Outside, evening has settled fully over the town. The rain has softened into mist, so fine it seems less to fall than to hover in the air. Roofs drip, gutters murmur. The market square lies dim and silver beneath a low sky, and the old Roman wall gleams faintly where torchlight touches the wet stone. You walk without hurry, your boots heavy but your body warmed from supper, your cloak smelling of smoke, lavender, damp wool, and the long companionship of rooms where people have waited out weather together. The church bell rings through the mist. One slow note, then another. It moves over the roofs, across the market cross, past the guest hall, past the gatehouse, and out toward the road where the shrine stands hidden beyond the wall. You think of the lost badge still tapping under its little roof, unless the wind has stilled it. No one can quite agree whether such small offerings are remembered by saints, travellers, or only by the wood that holds them, but tonight that seems enough. You pass the guest hall door and glimpse the half-burned candle inside. Lower now, its flames small and steady. The woman with the linen coif is turning the rushes with a wooden rake, freshening the floor before sleep. The carter has claimed a place near the wall. The pilgrim sits nearby, unlacing his wet shoe with care. The suspicious monk, less suspicious now and only tired, rests his wrapped casket beside his folded cloak. The clerk returns to his little chamber, where another page waits beneath another patient leak. The dog follows you to the threshold, then turns in 3 circles near the warmest patch of floor and lies down as if founding a kingdom. You step inside and settle beneath the old arcade one final time. The stone column at your shoulder is cool, worn, and faintly damp, somewhere in its long life. Rain has fallen on it as Roman rain, Saxon rain, Norman rain, ordinary rain with no name at all. Those who tell the tale never fully agree what ancient people did on days like this, but after your long wet journey, you feel the answer has become simple. They sought shelter, they warmed their hands, they ate what was hot, they listened to water on roofs, they complained, prayed, played games, copied words, guarded gates, watched roads, kept charms, doubted relics, and told stories until the weather became bearable. The hall grows quieter, cups are set aside, cloaks hang like shadows, the last pottage pot is covered, a child turns in sleep. The pilgrim's badges give one tiny clink as he lowers himself onto straw. The monk murmurs a prayer over the casket. Not loudly, not for display, but as one might thank a roof tile for being a roof tile. The clerk's quill scratches once in the side chamber, then stops. Some swear that if you sleep near old Roman stone during rain, you may dream of warm baths, bright tiles, and streets shining under ancient lamps. Others say you only dream of dry socks, which is the more believable miracle. Even now, it is hard to tell whether dreams come from memory, supper, saints, or a dog breathing under the bench. You draw your cloak around you. The lavender at your breast has faded, but its faint sweetness remains. The rain continues beyond the shutters, gentle now, no longer a trial, only a veil between this room and the road. The bell sounds once more, far and soft, and the town seems to fold itself inward around that note. The gate is barred, the market is empty, the shrine keeps its little badge, the Roman tiles sleep under straw, the hippocaust cools beneath grain and herbs, the half-burned candle bends toward its own pool of wax, and you, sheltered among smoke-dark rafters, damp rushes, old stones, and quiet breathing, feel the long rainy day close at last. The fire lowers, the room softens. The rain becomes smaller and smaller in your hearing, until it is not weather anymore, but a steady thread stitching roof to wall, wall to earth, earth to all the sleeping things beneath it. You do not need to walk farther tonight. The road can wait beyond the gate. The mud can keep its secrets until morning. The Romans can rest in their stones, the monks in their cloister, the watchmen by their keys, the merchants by their covered stalls, and the tired dog beneath your bench, paws twitching after dreams no clerk will ever record. You breathe in slowly, smoke, wool, straw, wax, lavender, Rain. You breathe out, and the old town breathes with you. The candle flame narrows to a golden bead. The last voices fade into murmurs, then into silence. Somewhere high above, hidden by mist, the bell tower keeps watch without speaking. Somewhere beyond the wall, the road lies pale and empty. Nothing hurries now. Nothing asks much of you. The world has become close, dim, and warm enough. Let your hands rest. Let your shoulders loosen. Let the old stone hold the night around you. The rain falls gently on the roofs, on the market cross, on the gate, on the shrine, on the covered tiles, on every forgotten road leading away into darkness. It falls without anger, without haste, softening every edge. And in that hush, you are safe inside the little circle of firelight, wrapped in wool and shadow, listening as the medieval world grows still. Sleep can come like that rain now, lightly at first, then all around you. The hall is almost dark. Only the lowest glow remains in the hearth, red as an ember hidden inside ash. You lie still beneath your cloak, and the old arcade beside you seems less like stone now and more like a quiet guardian, keeping its patient watch as it has done through many forgotten storms. The dog sighs once beneath the bench, then settles deeper into sleep. Outside, the mist drifts through the lanes. It softens the market stalls, the church wall, the Roman tiles beneath their straw covering, and the shrine beyond the gate where the little badge rests under its wooden roof. The road is empty. The fields are quiet. Even the rain seems to have grown tired, falling now in the gentlest possible way, as if careful not to wake the town. You hear no hurry, no harshness, only the small sounds of shelter, a coal shifting, a cloak rustling, a sleeper breathing, one last drop falling from the roof into a bowl already full of night. All the day's wandering begins to loosen its hold on you. The gatehouse, the market, the bathhouse, the cloister, the manor hall, the old Roman stones, all of it drifts together into one warm, dim memory. You do not need to follow it. You can let it pass like smoke beneath the rafters. The candle is gone now. The bell is silent. The mud waits outside, but it cannot reach you here. The rain keeps falling softly, and the town sleeps around you, stone by stone, roof by roof, breath by breath. So rest now. Let the old road fade. Let the fire become a small red star. Let the rain carry the last thoughts away into darkness.